Lay down. Alright, hello, welcome back. This is the intro to my first devlog where I'll be actually starting a project with Godot. So my previous video, I was just kind of feeling things out, learning how things work, trying to get a read on whether Godot is going to be a good option going forward. I feel pretty good about it, and I appreciate everyone's feedback on Godot from the last video. A lot of you were very helpful, and even the people who were like a little bit rude weren't really that bad. So thank you, and also welcome to everyone who found me through either that video or my previous video. I did want to mention that I am aware that the CEO of Unity stepped down, and I think that's great. For me, it really doesn't change my plans, at least not right now. I think he had to do it because he messed up, and I think the community response reflects that. And I'm probably not going to talk too much about Unity in the future unless they do something else big. For now, I'm set on my course. I'm going to check out Godot. I'm going to really dive in and see how it goes for my new project, but we're just going to get into it. So a lot of this first vlog is going to be preparing some assets. You don't really need to start with art assets, but for me it helps me get in touch with the game and the style that I'm going for. And then it also gives me things to show to people that are more exciting than just like a gray capsule. It's a little slower, but I'm changing my approach. For Project Caribou, I spent a couple of months planning out the structure of the game, the scope of the game, and then a lot of it ended up changing anyway. So instead of trying to get the shape of the game right from the beginning, I'm going to go right to the meat of the feature set, try to get the core features that I think are going to be the most fun as complete as possible, and then I'm going to sort of expand it from there. So it's kind of like an opposite strategy, but I think it'll be a lot more fun for me because I'll be able to actually play with the game from the beginning rather than sort of waiting for all of these pieces to fall into place before I even have like a complete game loop. So we're going heavy on the concept work, but I am starting with some like finished art assets. I may change them later, I may improve them later, but the first thing we need is a character. And for this game, I think we do actually need a character, at least like an avatar. For the last one, you'll know my last vlog, I deleted the player because the player avatar was not critical to an auto chess game. In this one, I'm going to be doing a fishing game. I have a lot of the ideas and features that I want for it planned out already, but we're just going to start with the basics, which is a character able to cast a fishing rod and do something to catch a fish. And that's kind of the piece I'm working on first. And once that is done, I want to expand it a little bit from there to be, the next features are going to be like collecting different types of fish. I might do selling fish. I haven't decided if I want to go that route yet. But collecting and trying to catch all the different kinds of fish is going to be the main progression of this game, because that's what I think is really fun. So we're going to get into it and start making this first character. I didn't record any of my game feature brainstorming process because it happened in little pieces over several days as I had time to do it. And like I mentioned in the intro, I didn't want to build out this fully realized design document for this one. I want this game to be a fun one, and it's going to be a learning process with Godot anyway, so I just wanted to get into it, kind of jump in the deep end. So I started by making a 3D character model in Blender. I was on the fence at first whether I wanted the main character to be human or an animal. I thought it could be cute to have the main character be a bear or a cat, some kind of animal that knows how to fish, but in the end I went for a human character. I might change this later if I develop some lore that I think is better than just having cute little people go fishing, but we'll burn that bridge when we get to it. The thing about human characters, or humanoid characters, is that even though I have made many of them, it never gets any easier. I had to restart the face like 5 times before I got something that I didn't hate. I'm planning to do a whole video about my humanoid character modeling process, but for now, I'll just say I use a box modeling method. I don't do any sculpting, and I just sort of build up the shapes from primitive shapes. And for most things it works pretty easily, but with people, I just have a hard time getting it right. Once I had the face kind of looking okay, I extrude out the neck from the head, the body, and the limbs. I went for some mitten hands on this one, just to make animating easier on myself. Animating fingers is a pain, and since the game is not going to really be hyper detailed in the first place, I don't think fingers are necessary. I also use my same lazy UV texturing process that I've talked about many times before, that I originally learned both from the Minions Arts game Patreon game developer streamer. She's very cool and has a lot of tutorials that are very helpful. And then the Ooblets dev Rebecca has a couple of blog posts about this as well. But basically I have a simple texture with color swatches, gradient swatches, and then I unwrap the pieces of the model onto those colors. I'll almost certainly rework this texture and the colors I've picked here as I work out the style I want for this game. This is just a first quick pass on it. Next, I made my little character some clothes and some hair. I made this outfit that's kind of inspired by fishing waders, but ended up looking more like overalls. And I gave her some space buns for hair, just kind of on a whim. I didn't really sketch these out or anything. I didn't love her face at first, which seems mean. I wasn't really sure, something was off. But I took a little break, I came back to it and adjusted the proportions of her face, her eyes, and also her body was a little bit weird compared to her head. I was going for cute proportions where the head is larger than it typically is on like a realistic human, but I just got it a little bit wrong, and so I made some tweaks and I liked it a lot better. And it took me a good few days to get the model done, which I wasn't expecting. I was expecting this to take a couple of hours. But I had to redo the face so many times, and just everything wasn't feeling right until the very end. But after that point, things started to go a lot more smoothly. I use Rigify for the armature. It's a rigging add-on that offers a few rigs of different shapes, and they come with a bunch of controls that make it kind of easy to move things around. I used the humanoid meta rig, of course, and then the auto weights were pretty good, so I just did auto weight and tidied up the weight painting, and it was basically good to go. From here I had to do some animation, which I like. I like animation. It's a little tedious, but it's generally pretty fun for me. I did a simple idle and walking animation. I've done a few walking animations at this point, and I think this I am actually getting better at. It went a lot faster than usual, and I think it looks pretty good. And then I realized I actually need a whole second set of animations for when the player is carrying a fishing rod. I modeled a very simple fishing rod, leaving out the line and the hook. I'm not sure how I'm gonna do the fishing line in game, or if I will even show the fishing line. It may be enough to just use the fishing bobber to show where the cast has landed and just sort of abstract out the actual line. But that's a problem for another day. I'm going to think about that some more and try and figure out if there's a way that looks good and is performance and also not too crazy on the math. With the fishing rod modeled, I realized I had to solve another problem that I dug up in my Godot Basics video, which is that I need to figure out how I can parent this fishing rod to a bone in the skeleton, the hand, since Godot imports skeletons as like a whole separate node. I did some Googling and found documentation that said the bone attachment 3D could be automatically imported from Blender if something is parented to a bone. So with that, I just created an object, parented it to the bone, and parented the fishing rod to that object. We'll come back to this later and explain why it didn't quite work how I expected. It would have been easier for me to do things a different way, but at the time, this is what I thought I needed to do based on the docs. Next, I had to do something I've only done once before, and that is animations that have two parts, two objects. When casting and reeling the fishing rod, the character moves, but the fishing rod also moves because it bends as the cast is being done. It bends as the reel is being done, as there's tension on it. So I animated these two animations by going back and forth between the objects, animating them separately, making sure that the length of each animation matches up, especially in the reel one, because that one's intended to be looping. So I should be able to export both of these animations and then just start them at the same time and have them run in tandem. I also added animations for walking with the fishing rod, an idle holding the rod, and then an idle for when the rod has been cast and is sitting in the water. So I needed a lot of animations for this one, but I got them all done, and I think they look pretty good. Next, things got a little chaotic as I tried to get my complicated animations into Godot. Now remember how I mentioned that the fishing rod should just import with the bone attachment 3D node? Well, I realized too late. I'm pretty sure that's only for Blender imports. Like I mentioned in my other video, I've been prioritizing the GLTF format for export for a couple of different reasons, but because I'm not using the Blender import, the fishing rod did get pulled into the scene, but it wasn't in the right spot, it wasn't parented correctly, and that bone attachment 3D node did not get automatically created like I think it would have if I was using Blender. So basically, the solution for this, after I did some fiddling and tried some different things, was getting rid of that bone parenting relationship entirely in Blender, just not trying to use that at all. I just position the fishing rod at the origin where it goes, and then export the fishing rod and the characters separately. Then in Godot, I'm basically just adding that bone attachment node myself. So in Godot, I added a bone attachment 3D node, set the bone that it's attached to the left hand, and then add a node 3D below that to handle the offset, because if I just leave it how it is, the fishing rod is going to point the same way as the hand, and that's not really what we want. So it is basically the same thing that's happening here, except the automatic export didn't work. I'm guessing that if you do a Blender import, it probably works, but I didn't try it because that's not really what I wanted to do. And that's what I've been up to for the past couple weeks. I really wanted to get the animation trees set up for a nice even stopping point, but I just didn't have time to get to it before I had to wrap up this video so I could start editing. But the next steps are going to be getting the animation trees configured and hooking it up to code, just like in my previous video about basics in Godot for 3D. So I want to be able to move the character around, cast the fishing rod, let it sit, and then reel it in. And once I have all these states working and animating, I'm going to actually start on the fishing minigame, which I still need to finish designing. We're doing things a little more loosey-goosey for this game, and it's been a lot of fun so far, very experimental, and if all goes well, I should have the main fishing mechanic done in a few weeks. Now, I say this with some hesitation because in a few weeks, NaNoWriMo is also starting, and I've still got to outline the novel I'm going to write for that, so not sure I'll have as much time as I think I will, but either way, I'm hoping to really bust out the main fishing minigame first so that I have something playable. Like I mentioned, I want to start with the core of the game and I want to kind of work my way outward. and build around it so that I know that I've always got something fun at the center. I hope you had fun watching this devlog. I'll try to come up with a name for this game, at least a working title. I'm really not good at names. My last game did not have a name ever, and I worked on it for a couple of years. But I'm excited to see how things shape up and come together. You can subscribe if you'd like to follow along with this progress as well, or if you'd like to see any of my other videos about games, development, or just how to be a creative person in an online world. So I'll be back soon with another video, and I hope to see you there. Okay, bye-bye.